to disclose the truth about a subject that has been ridiculed and questioned, denied for at least 50 years. The men and women who are on this stage and the some 350 additional military intelligence witnesses to the so-called UFO matter and extraterrestrial intelligence can prove and will prove that we are not alone.
Former Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell was on a radio show over in England, and he says that for 6 decades the government's been covering up the fact that aliens do exist. Guess who's joining us on the phone?
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Here is a bulletin from CBS News. In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by the
Curious
shooting.
point in American government. When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government, whether it's the cabinet or the Senate? I think that's the big question.
What is hate speech? And should the government ban it?
I'm absolutely convinced that this could be the beginning of a great worldwide move of the Spirit of
God.
God.
An asteroid ever threatens Earth, we won't be entirely helpless. On June 20th, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy revealed its 5-step plan for defending our planet.
President Obama has done it again. He's attacking Christians, this time at the Easter prayer breakfast, calling Christians, quote, less than loving, end quote.
Each and every year, thousands of people go missing in national parks all over the country. Many of those who vanish are never found and disappear under the strangest of circumstances.
I'm absolutely convinced
there are thousands of cases
that
like
this
this,
could be the beginning
simply going to
of a great worldwide
the
Spirit of
Former
God.
Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell was on a radio show over in England, and he says that for 6 decades the government's been covering up the fact that aliens
Of a great
do exist.
worldwide
Guess who's joining us on the former Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell was on a radio show over in England.
Welcome to Ancient Myths and Modern Mysteries with your host, Vaughn Goodwin. To participate in the discussion, dial 929-477-3397 and press 1 on your keypad.
From the land of cypress swamps, welcome wherever you may be to Myths and Mysteries. This is a program that airs the first Monday of each month and is dedicated to making sense of the noise that exists in the world today as opinion, prejudice, and confusion. Robert Vanderklok, Thomas Lawrence, and myself strive to offer up clarity, and we will always distinguish fact from conjecture. You are welcome to join the conversation tonight by dialing 929-477-3397 and pressing 1 on your keypad. Or you may elect to ask a question or make a comment off the air via the number I just mentioned, and I will be your voice. Or you can question or make a comment by emailing me the show at mythsandmysteries@yahoo.com. Either way is good with me. We discuss a wide range of topics, so don't hesitate to introduce anything new that may be on your mind. Now, I want to bring Vanderklok and Lawrence onto the show. And good evening, gentlemen. How are you doing tonight?
Hello, fellas. Hi, it's good to be back on. This is Thomas. It's great to be here.
Robert, how are you doing tonight,
Mr. Vanderklok?
I am rip-roaring and ready to go. And whenever you say go, we're going to have quite a show tonight. And I'm anxious to have our listeners now in 5 countries around the world stay with us for all of it, because it's going to be quite compelling, and I believe that this show will be one of our more memorable ones when we look at it after the fact.
All right. I think what we're going to do tonight, Robert, we're going to start with you, and you have a couple of things that you want to do. You have a guest that you want to bring on. And Thomas, you and I are going to visit in the second hour and have a discussion and some on various topics as well. So, Robert, I'm going to turn you loose, buddy, and let you go.
Okay, thank you very much. First, a shout out to all our listeners. The show has begun to take off, and we are apparently connecting with a lot of people who have apparently never connected with some of the other shows of this type. And if you're listening to these kind of shows, we encourage you to continue doing it, not necessarily this show, but others. We're all learning. We say again that we are not experts in this. We consider ourselves well-researched, and we let you know the results of the research and let the listening audience do what they will with it. But I'm going to ask your help on a couple of things. First thing I want to do is tell you something that just happened about an hour ago. A long time back, I can't even remember how long, I had contacted Paul Davids. He is the person who wrote and was the executive director of the 1994 made-for-cable film Roswell, the UFO Cover-Up, an awesome depiction of what happened down there in 1947. So I struck up a friendship with him. And for those of you who've seen the movie, this will make sense and it'll be a little more clarity-wise for the people who've seen the movie. I had asked him a question sometimes back about a shadowy character in the movie named Townsend. Okay, the movie takes place during the 30th anniversary of the 509th Bombardment Group in 1977. The people that had the Roswell incident fall in their laps in 1947. And I had asked him about this shadowy character who was played by Martin Sheen. We all know him. He has a small but extremely critical role in the movie. He's trailing Jesse Marcel, who was the fall guy and the victim of the press conference and all that, and we're all trying to find out why. And I asked Paul Davids, because he put together the script, I said, Paul, is Townsend a real character? Is he a depiction of something fictional, or is he a compilation of things? And just an hour ago, out of nowhere, I got a response from him, and I'm going to read it to you right now. He says, Townsend is a fictional character invented to help bring in some of the majestic 12 extensions of the Roswell story in typical disinformation style, spiking what seems to be the credible events with what could be very many lies, spreading deliberate confusion, leaving his victim, Jesse Marcel, in a corner where he cannot prove what is true and what is not true, and attempting to move his case forward without probably discrediting himself is almost impossible. A black ops attempt at disinformation. I wanted to pass that on to you. For those of you who have not seen the movie, I urge you to see it. I'm telling you, the Army Air Corps did not want this out in 1994. When they couldn't stop the movie, they put the price up very high. I had to rent it for $75, and I did it. I said, "To hell, I'm going to do this," and it turned out to be tremendous. And so I urge you to go see that, and just keep in mind when you see the character Townsend that you've had a little heads up on what it's all about. Okay, two topics, folks, I want to bring up, and I'll do it very quickly because I can't wait to get to our first special guest tonight. Number one, I wanted to mention a little conjecture about the following question to our audience. How many extraterrestrial races are actually out there? Okay, good question. And who knows, okay? Somebody may know, but we don't, so we can conjecture and speculate in any direction we want. I'll start this off by saying that a very high-level source of mine, who I'm not going to divulge right now, has told me of at least 4 races of beings that have what you might call a working contact with the United States government, doing something with them, okay? We're only going to talk about the 4th and final one of the people that I'm aware of. This race was called the Conformers. They had to give it a nickname. It apparently is working on some sort of ecological project for this planet in behalf of the United States government. And the story that I got was that there's some kind of ecological problem on this planet that's going to kill us unless it's stopped or minimized or eliminated. And this race of beings is apparently helping us with it. They said that you will not be able to handle it alone, and we're simply here to make sure that your planet thrives and survives, and in order to do that, we've got to help you on it. So in speculating what this project is, and I don't know what it is, I haven't been made privy to it. I first guessed biohazard, something to do with biohazard situations, with fallout, things like that. Second thing might be trying to prevent the nuclear threat, and I have been advised that there are races of beings already trying to help us prevent that. That's a timely comment considering that Iran and North Korea are both in the news lately, okay? The third possibility, and I kind of lean toward this one, is something to do with ocean pollution. Okay, we're really killing our oceans with everything we're pouring into that. And it's no surprise, folks, that a lot of UFO activity occurs underwater, what we call USOs, unidentified submersible objects. And maybe that's one of the reasons they're all down there. The U.S. Navy is neck deep in the research for this, and there's no pun intended here. They've got a lot of things going down there. And So, here's the point. I come up with 4 races, all right? The next thing I wanted to do on the same subject is go to Clark McClelland. He was a NASA rocket specialist, worked for NASA for 34 years, 1958 to 1992. And he at one time was the ground crew fleet commander of the space shuttle, pretty high up. Early in about 2003, I was about an hour before one of my lectures that I was doing in Waldeck, New Jersey at the time, the same place I was a postmaster, as Vaughn knows. He called me and I said, do you have any nuggets for my audience tonight? And he said, well, here's one. He said, as of 1992, my last year of employment with NASA, they already knew that there were at least 20 races observing us. That's a quote. All right, so we go from 4 to 20. Next, we bring up Clifford Stone, well-known researcher, a tremendous American in my book. He was a sergeant in the Army, had a top-secret clearance. Part of his duty there, and even his military superiors didn't know this, is that he was part of an extraterrestrial recovery team, a 3-man team that would go around to any part of the planet that had these crashes occurring all over the place, and their job was to, get the pieces, get the debris, get the bodies if there are any, vacuum the place and threaten and intimidate anybody who saw it, and be back in America within 24 hours. No news, no internet, no papers, no nothing. Okay, so we go from 4 to 20 to 57, and that's the number he come up with. He was aware of 57 races out there during the time he was active in this. From there, we go to Gil Carlson. Gil Carlson is the gentleman who's been writing some terrific short books under what is called the Blue Planet Project, and I'm sure some of you have heard of that. You can get some of these books online. I guess there's about 10 or 11 of them now, and I've gotten most of them. The number he came up with is as many as 120. And we will leave it at that, folks, because of the following reason. There's people in the know who are saying there may be as many as 120 races out there, but what about the races they don't know about? Point of it all is that this universe is teeming with life one way or the other if any of these numbers have relevance. And if any of you folks listening tonight have some input or insight on this, and you want to call that number, I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to even have it on the radio if you want, and we can keep it anonymous if you wish. Again, 929-477-3397. Okay? Topic 2, and I'll go through this one quickly. About a month ago, it was just around the time of our July show, I became aware of a book that had been written in 2007 called Alien Interview. This was written by Lawrence Spencer, who was a well-known author who had gained fame in the 1990s for a book called The Oz Factors. And I was aware of the book. I'd heard of it. I've never read it. I have no idea at all what it's about. But apparently an elderly woman, this is how the story goes, an elderly woman read this book and began communicating with Lawrence Spencer and said, I really like your research. I like what you've done here. And because of who you are and what you've done with this book, I am about to unburden myself with a 50-year secret that I'm only going to talk to you about. My plans are twofold. I'm moving to Ireland very shortly. I expect to have my last years there. And either before that or sometime after it in the hands of my estate, you'll be receiving some materials to understand what this is all about. There were a few phone conversations and letters between the two people. And she did move to Ireland as expected. She did die in 1998. And sometime thereafter, Lawrence Spencer received a big box of materials. Documents, diaries, news articles, pictures in some cases, all toward the following story, and this is what got my red flag up on this. Number one, Lawrence Spencer said about this whole story in his book, he said, look, I don't know if I can verify any of this. I don't know if the person who called me on the phone is the person they said they were. I'm not a UFO researcher, so I'm not about to try to verify and corroborate all the documentation and things in here. I'll let that go to the UFO researchers. The story is this. It was a woman who said her name was Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. And she said she was the only female that it was allowed on the Roswell crash site in 1947. She had driven a military ambulance to the crash site on orders of Captain Sheridan Cabot, and he being one of the first 2 military men at the crash when they all found it out. And she did that, and he instructed her, said, look, you're coming here to provide any medical assistance to any victims that are still alive. And at this point, she hadn't even been told what she was going to see. So she gets there, and of course, there's a saucer-like object, 3 dead bodies, and 1 still alive and in pretty good condition. And according to the account, this being, and he was described as asexual, neither male nor female, or both if you want to look at it that way, apparently decided to telepathically communicate with the 1 female on the crash scene. Matilda had no idea why that she was chosen, but they began a telepathic communication, which lasted for quite a while, and she began logging in on all the information she was getting. A lot of it was telepathic. She, wrote it all down. She was instructed to present this information to the military advisors every day on a same-day basis. And they kind of gave her a hard time, too. They thought she was holding back on things. And she said, look, I have no idea what this being is really talking about. I'm just giving you word for word, verbatim, everything that this being is telepathically communicating with me. It's up to you guys to figure it all out, being intelligence personnel. That's the nature of the story, folks. Now, I understand my buddy Thomas has read the account of this online, so he may want to make some comments on it later. But in my case, being a researcher, I'm going to dig further into this. And one of the reasons I brought it up tonight is that I would like some of you who have either read the book or aware of it or have some insight on the subject itself to give us a call. I'd like to know some more about this, and I'm going to begin digging deep. So, again, 929-477-3397, and we appreciate anything you can do for this. Again, we'll keep your name anonymous. Any way you want it, you can be on the radio or off. In case there's a call coming in, we'll try to do this during the show time. Okay, as a quick preface, around 1997 or so, just before I ended up going to Port St. Lucie, Florida, for a sit-down interview with Colonel Philip J. Corso, who wrote The Day After Roswell. I became aware through my research buddy Diane in Hudson Valley, New York, of a group that existed in Pine Bush, that they would meet on the first Wednesday of every month and just discuss UFO subjects. It was kind of like a round-robin thing. Anybody who showed up would have a chance to say something that they wanted to say about sightings they've seen or something they've heard or something that happened to a friend of them. If they had nothing to report, they would just say, I'm Joe from Yonkers and nothing to report. So Diane and I and a friend of mine, Lenny Pretko, decided to go up there from northern New Jersey for one of these meetings. Lenny, by the way, is now in the Disclosure Witness Program under Dr. Stephen Greer. Most of you have heard of that. I got him in there. And so there were three of us, and I went to this meeting. I say it's about an hour-and-a-half trip from New Jersey, and I was just hooked right immediately. This is where I want to be every time I can. Because of the distance, we managed to make a few more meetings over the next few years, but then by the time 2003 rolled around, both Diane's family and my family had moved up to Hudson Valley, New York. So now we were a lot closer, so we could attend these meetings on a regular basis if we wanted to. At the time, the moderators of this group were our special guest, number one, his wife, and a gentleman named Smoothie, who unfortunately died a few years ago. He was much beloved, and we really liked him, and we miss him. But suffice it to say that he had been an aircraft mechanic on the legendary SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, so he was of special interest to me, of course. His wife, the gentleman's wife, is no longer involved with the group. She's doing other things. Really nice lady. So my special guest has been moderating the group for years now on his own. And over the last 4 years, even though I've been in Arkansas, I managed to make two of the meetings. My vacations to coincide with them. And he's done a masterful job of doing this. And we all can't wait to hear what he's going to say. So without further ado, I welcome my friend of 20-some-odd years, Bill Wiand, to the show. Hey, Bill, thanks so much for being with us. You're on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And the one thing that amazes me about you is you remember all of these dates, all of these names. It's just totally incredible to me because I can hardly remember my own name. So it's an honor to speak with you again.
Oh, that's terrific, Bill. You know what? Postmasters have this tendency to go through names and dates and numbers and like secondhand. So I take no credit for that. I give that to my job. Anyway, Bill, listen, we kind of hope you would tell us about your educational background, your military background, and everything to start with. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, my military background is back in the 60s. There was a war going on, and the draft was available to a lot of young men. And one of the things was you went down, you got your physical, and then they would even let you know if you were going to be drafted or not. And while I was down there, at that time they drafted, they had us all line up, and they went down the line, Army, Navy, Marines. Army, Navy, Marines. At the time, the Marines and the Navy were drafting young men. So I made a choice and decided that I would rather go in the Army, so I enlisted and went through basic training, which was exciting, and then I went through missile school, which was almost a year long. It was a Nike missile internal guidance repair. I learned a lot of things about rockets, hydraulics, electronics. Most of the electronics were just vacuum tubes in that day, so it was a very interesting change. I've watched the computers change from vacuum tubes to transistors. One thing that I did really enjoy was going to the radar set that they had down there, and it was the high acquisition radar for the Nike missile, and we were able to see a lot of, they call them just bogeys or something that came in. There was always something going across the screen at a very, very high altitude, very, very fast. And these are the days before we had all the satellites and everything. So I still remember that it was almost like an everyday thing, so it became very just nonchalant about everything. One thing about the military is, and I noticed that it's getting in the news today, is people who have secret security clearances. Sometimes the security clearance is I had just a top secret, so it was a lower one. That was because in the missile manuals that I had, they were all stamped top secret. So in order for me to read and to teach, then because I also became an instructor there, I would have to have a top secret security clearance. And I'm listening now on the news where Mr. Trump is trying to take away the security clearances of people who are no longer work for the government but are still involved in some governmental activities. So I don't know how that's going to pan out, and I don't know how he's going to be able to do that. So it would be an interesting thing to watch. So that's
can I say something?
Yes.
Bill, can I say something in there?
Sure.
I know the Democrats are making political hay out of this, but having had a security clearance of my own when I was working in intelligence, it was understood that once you're out of the loop, you're not supposed to have access to things that are now in the presence of others. So it was no big deal to have a revocation of a clearance. I guess as a political courtesy, maybe some people kept it, but I don't see it as a big deal myself. I just wanted to throw that in. So go ahead.
Oh no, I understand. It seems to be very very politically motivated with all of the response. And you're right. If you're not involved in the work, why do you need the security clearance? And
right.
There's other things that go on with our government that's kind of crazy. So, but it's all part of the game. My education, I have a PhD in metaphysics through the American Institute of Holistic Theology, and my thesis that I did my PhD with is spiritual changes of UFO abductees. And I did that after I joined the group. The group started out as being just have you ever seen a UFO type thing? And then it grew into, have you ever been on a UFO? Have you ever been in contact with extraterrestrials? And the group grew pretty fast with people who had claimed to have had experiences with aliens and experiences on board ship. And one of the things that I did is I went and became a certified hypnotherapist because I thought that regressing people would help them see past their problems and to make it easier for them. But I found out real fast that was not the case, because once you open Pandora's box, unless you're equipped to deal with the demons that are there, it's a very, very bad thing to try to do. So I kind of left that alone, and I just got to the point where I could counsel people, and I spoke to people from all over the world about being abducted, about meeting aliens, about seeing the ships, seeing the lights in the sky. And so our group is still active, but we don't have as many abductee people there. Apparently, there was a time when the abductions slowed down to almost nothing, and I talked to a lady from Australia who came to the meeting, and she had told me that there was a 50-year agreement signed by Eisenhower for all of this to happen, and that the agreement was in 1946. So 50 years from that, which was 96, that agreement became null and void. So the majority of those encounters stopped, and that was the gray. I guess he signed it with the Greys and the tall Greys. So it was an interesting reason for all of that to stop and to slow down. There are still people who are being contacted. They're being contacted by different races, and they seem to go in waves. There'll be, for a short period of time, there'll be a group comes in, to learn about us or do whatever they do. They'll move on, and then another group comes on. So it's very interesting on how, over the years, the different waves came through to see the type of to do the abductions or the contacts. So I'm sure it's not over, but I think it's going to take a different pattern. I think it's going to take more of a exposure pattern. I think we're about ready for the exposure, because I think we've reached the end of our ecological issues. I think they've gotten so bad now that we have to do something, because we have no other place to go. We have no more to pollute. We have no more land to take down. It's going to be very, very tough. The things that happen when people, the stories that people told when they were abducted, they were told, recycle, reuse, give up meat, watch your diet, save the planet, save the water, and a lot of them were given different skills. They went off and became these little farmers. They became more self-sufficient. They were told that nobody's going to help them. They need to help themselves. And right now, the majority of the people in the world are looking at their governments to bail them out and to help them with things. And the governments really don't have the training or the manpower to assist in something like that. It all has to be grassroots things, local. You see, even people in New York City have little gardens on the rooftops, and they have gardens in the alleyways. They have gardens any place they can put them. So these are the people that are listening, and these are the people that I believe will be contacted, because they're going to be the only ones that are going to make it.
Yeah. Well, that I was going to say, Bill, that ties in with what I've been told by some of my sources, that there are races out there, at least one and maybe more, that wish to peaceably interact with people like, bricklayers, postmasters, teachers, whatever, and stay away from the governments, because the governments have spent more time trying to deny their existence. And, when you protest too much that way, these races are saying, okay, well, the hell with them then. We'll go down and see everyday Americans or everyday Russians and just peaceably interact with them, because we have no hostility intended. So that would kind of tie right in. I would like to clarify something you said, Bill, if I may. You said you were speaking in the hypnotherapy work on abductions and what they had gone through. How about your own personal experience? Have you had encounters yourself?
I've had encounters all my life. I was born and raised, early on in Peekskill, and in Peekskill, we lived on the Yansville Creek, and I remember small beings coming to my room, and I had brothers and sisters at the time, but they would come in, they would take each hand and fly me out through the window and actually out through the screen, and I actually felt and a sensation of going through the screen and watching the trees. When I see the trees would sparkle, almost like the Krillian energy when they do the thing with the high voltage. So and it would take me out around the past Camp Smith and up towards the Bear Mountain Bridge. And it used to happen a lot. I spoke to my mother, and my mother said not to worry, because it was like Washington Irving's books with the little people, and when they took
Sleepy Hollow
and Winkle up in the clouds with the things. So it was comforting, but not totally reassuring. One other thing is my mother died very young, so I have I can't go back and find any stories and find any information from her. So, but that was things that happened there, and also I saw. It was like in one of the movies where there's a great big bright light, and there's it looked like people or creatures walking out through the light. And I've seen that in Peekskill. I've seen it. I lived in Pearl River for some time, and I've also seen it up here. So it's a reoccurring scenario that I see, and I'm not sure how that happens. Now, when I was in Pearl River. We had casement windows, which the windows over top of the bed, they went out, they folded out, and I remember being floated up and floating out the window, and it was a very narrow space between the two buildings, but it was just enough for me to get out, and then they would turn me, and I would go into the backyard to that bright light. And I don't remember much from that. I just remember that it happened a lot. I don't have a lot of memories about it, but it just seemed to be, it never bothered me that much. I also, when I was in Pearl River, at night I would wake up and I would see cars going across the ceiling, like railroad cars, but it looked like they had cameras on or recorders on, and it would just disappear into the wall and everything would disappear, and it happened a lot. So I'm not really sure what that was all about. My guess would be they're monitoring my dreams, monitoring what I saw and what I felt. There was one time where there was they brought me back and there was a lights flashing and everything outside, and it looked like there was fire trucks and stuff out there. And my wife, who doesn't normally wake up, she woke up and thought there was fire trucks out front, and she went out to look out the window, and there was nothing there. So it was just the bright lights that I guess with them leaving. So it was kind of different. One of the issues that comes with people who have been contacted or anything, it's generally only one person. It's not husband and wife. It's not anything like that. Sometimes it's mother-daughter. Sometimes it's father-son, and they seem to progress through the family. So nobody's really sure on what their purpose was and what they were doing all that time. So it was always pretty interesting.
Hey, Bill, we have a caller that doesn't not want to go on the air because they want to remain anonymous. They don't want their voice on the air. But they had a comment about you being taken through the window and taken somewhere, that sort of thing. They had a similar experience happen to themselves when they were young, as I'm told, where they were a recurring thing where they were removed from their bedroom through the window, and then that experience, they were always taken to a room that had some equipment in it, and when they were brought back to their bedroom as a child, they would suffer some ill effects for a few hours or the next day, that sort of thing. Did you suffer any or experience any ill effects physically after those experiences? That's the question that was asked.
I don't remember in anything in particular, but I did have, childhood bloody noses. So, and that seemed to be, I never put the two and two together, but I do know that people complain about bloody noses and stuff. What I used to worry about, not worry, but what used to bother me is I always felt like I missed a friend, one of those type of things where they were friends, like a play date or something like, they call it play dates now. There was 6 children in our family. I'm not really close with them. We didn't, we lived just outside of town. The house, when we first moved in the house, it had no running water. We had to go to a well to get water, and we had outhouses. So it was pretty interesting growing up at that time. But I don't remember any ill effects really on most of the adventures that I had.
Okay, Bill, a question for you. Seeing as how this has been going on since you were a youngster, in your memory, when is the last time that you're aware of anything like this happening to you? I'm looking for a span here, basically.
A couple months ago, I had a, I'll call it a session, where you hear the noise start, you start to feel that there's something going on, and normally you can just let it go, but it's fear that builds up, and you can't stop the fear. So it still happens, but it's not as active as it was. And I'm not sure what they want. I'm not sure what they're looking for. It just happens, and most of the contactees that I know, the abductees, they were never given a reason. And I used to ask, and they just used to tell me because they can.
Mm-hmm. Does the issue of being implanted at all, is that a factor here?
I believe that everybody is got something, that anybody who's been contacted, and it's amazing on how many people have been contacted but don't know or don't remember or don't associate anything with that. But I'm sure that they have some kind of an implant. They have something that they put on you so that they know who you are. They know that it's probably even like the chip that they put in the dogs has all this information on. So if there's somebody happens to be flying over in the neighborhood and their screen lights up and says, we have Bill here. We know he's 5'11". We know, and they would know the whole story. And then if they needed any more information, they would then come down and take whatever information they need from you. And I don't understand how they get the information out, whether it's just blood work or if they actually give you a test or whatever. I'm not sure.
One of our mutual friends. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. You want to get in there? Yeah.
No, go ahead. We're good.
One of our mutual friends, Bill, has been implanted twice. Once in the brain, once in the leg, and the one in the brain was removed. The one in the leg is going to stay there because the person involved said, Bob, basically, if I have this taken out and they can't track me anymore, maybe they might cause me harm or something. So it's going to stay with this person until they die, I guess. That's why I brought it up. Bill, I wanted to get back to the Pine Bush Group, whose official title is UFOS, United Friends Observer Society of Pine Bush. I'm sure that in the years that you've done this, you probably have some very memorable experiences from people who have told you things. And I was going to ask you what might be some of the more notable experiences or things that you've heard. And I want to add one once you're done with that. Do you have anything to offer us with that?
Well, the one thing that I believe is we had a visit from a group of aliens. This was when we were actually in Pine Bush at the which is now the Knights of Columbus Hall. We were sitting there at the table and people were coming in, and I noticed this group that came in and they introduced themselves. They said they were from Brazil, and as they were going out, I told them, I know who you are, and I said, don't worry. And he looked at me and he smiled. There was, I think, a man and two women, but they were absolutely perfect. I mean, physically perfect. And the sense that I got was a very loving feeling and a very, very different than you would sense with, I guess, if you're a sensitive person with a normal. So I really thought that those were, it was very interesting that happened. It still sticks with me today, and I know I've met them again, but I don't know where. We've had some interesting people that have really tough stories to tell about where they're trying to protect their child, and it happened to them, then it happens to their children, and there's no place to go where they can't find you, and that's the whole thing. Probably with the implants, but I think that they also have implants that are not detectable by our scientists yet. So anybody who's had contact, or they know who we are, they know where you are, and South America seems to have the worst, and Central America the worst issues with people being hurt on abduction things. It's kind of like when the movie Predator came out. They liked the hot weather, and it was South America, and there were devils and stuff. So that might be where that story came from. Most of the movies that we see on TV, they have some basis of the story either through legend or maybe fact or something, and they just add enough on it to have you drawn into the situation but not make it a believable situation.
I should mention to our audience, folks, that Pine Bush, New York, has long been considered a UFO hotspot. If I'm not wrong on this, Bill, I believe they still have a Pine Bush UFO parade day every year.
Right.
I know that you actually. Yeah, go ahead.
It was started by my wife and I and a couple of friends, and it was just a festival where we had the locals come out, and we would have speakers come in, but the town took it over because it was a successful thing, and now it's a little more carnival atmosphere, but it's still fun. There's a lot of people who come there. You can dress up as an alien. You can do cosplay. There's speakers that come in, so it is pretty exciting. I think 3 or 4 in the United States festivals. One is Lexington, Vermont, and there's Roswell. It's just a fun thing to do, and people are no longer stigmatized by believing in UFOs, and I think that's one of the good things, because we've had so many movies out there where they get to see good aliens interacting with humans and good aliens. There's a few bad aliens in there, but there's always something good, and it's always a win-win situation. So I think
Bob, we have a caller that would like to ask a question along those same lines that Bill just mentioned. So this caller is also anonymous and wants to remain so. So, caller, you're on the air.
There is a huge amount of evidence for the existence of extraterrestrials and their interactions with humans over the recorded history of humankind. So I don't need to be convinced of their existence. What I find truly confusing, and this is what my question is, I saw the video on YouTube of the 2001 National Press Club where they did the UFO disclosure, and there were people...
Yeah, Dr. Greer, yeah.
...who have had interactions with extraterrestrials and UFOs who were not kooks. They weren't fringy people. They had high security clearances. They had PhDs, and they were high-functioning individuals. And I think even one of the participants referred to the idea that that particular meeting would be making national news. What I find truly confusing is, why isn't mainstream media covering any of this? Why is it still that all of this information is in alternative news sources and alternative media?
Bill, take that one.
Yeah, Bill. Maybe I can throw my 2 cents in on this. The CIA makes the music; we all dance to it when it comes to the mainstream media. They have a solid control over what gets published, what gets printed, what gets broadcast, and they do let occasionally, just by design, they let a few of these things out once in a while. Just because, if they just cut everything off, it would be very suspicious. And it would be one of those things where it says, we think it does protest too much. It doesn't bother the government or the CIA when these things are on cable or not mainstream. And the point was made by Clifford Stone, if I can just mention this also, regarding the questioner. He says, you can basically say anything you want to when it comes to government cover-ups and suppression and all that. However, when you say you can prove it, then their ears go up, then the antennae fly up, and then they're really listening. I hope that gives the caller some information on this. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think in situations like that, Bob, when people call in, certainly they want an answer from you or from our guest. But I think a lot of times people, when they call in like that, they're just kind of frustrated like we are sometimes. They want to just kind of vent a little bit. But I think your answer was good, and I think she hung up. She's still listening, but she got off the air. But I'm sure she's satisfied with that. It's still frustrating to me. I mean, I'm that deep in it with you and Thomas all the time, so it's frustrating. It really is.
Well, you're looking for answers that are out there, but you can't make that final step to get the conclusive proof. The evidence is all over the place, but the proof is suppressed, and it makes it difficult. So I understand that. Bill, if I may, one thing I want to mention about the Pine Bush group, and I love these folks up there, as you know. The most memorable meeting for me was when we had Brenda. Remember Brenda, the clairvoyant?
Yes.
It was early. I think it was in April, maybe 2005, and this person sees the future basically, and she started talking about something, and I saw tears starting to come down in her eyes, and her body literally started to shake. I'll never forget this. And she had said something terrible is about to happen soon in Georgia or someplace south of that, and 28 days later, Katrina happened. I can't get that out of my mind, and she was just physically going through some terrible vision, and she couldn't even control her body at the time. I'll never forget that. And I just wanted to throw that in because I know this Pine Bush group is dynamite sometimes, and that was for me.
Yeah, one of the things that happened when people are contacted or have exposure to, we'll say, other other races and stuff. Most of the abductees have become more psychically aware, more intuitive. They can judge the truth a little bit better. They can sometimes get more paranoid about the things because they know when they know when the government's lying. They know when things are when someone comes in the room and they're not normally. At the meeting, we've had people we thought were government agents coming in, and at the early stages of the meetings years ago, there was wiretapping on the phones. There was people who were made very, very insecure because cars would follow them and stuff. So we weren't sure if it was just, the Men in Black, the whole scenario with that. It did make people quite nervous, and it made a lot of people back off from the group and kind of slowly fade away into the sunset. So the government can do a lot of things if there's paranoid involved. And the lady who asked about why isn't it on in the newspapers or anything, you're right. The government controls everything that's printed, and but I don't understand, with the internet out there, why there's so much on there about the Kardashians, and how come we don't hear about the stuff that goes on. I just saw that the Air Force had a meteor up, and I think it was in Greenland, at Thule, Greenland, at that big base up there, and it wasn't on. No one mentioned it except a little small story on the internet. So it was quite a big meteor. So the government doesn't want to tell us. They're going to lose in the end. That's the whole thing. When the truth comes out, can they back off from all the lies?
Bill, the agencies, they love to troll the websites and the Facebook sites and to try to muddle up their works with disinformation. No matter how true it is, they're going to make you think that it's a hologram or it's Photoshop. There's still groups that are marginalizing this, even though the awareness has been raised over the last 2 years. I think you'd agree with that, with the AATIP program and all that. We still have to deal with this, but go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that, we have to deal with it, but we don't have to believe it, and that's the thing. If we can still fight fight the good fight, and it will come out. I have some friends that work in the aerospace industry, and we're putting up a lot of satellites that have some very, very sophisticated instruments on them, and they're all being labeled, weather satellites, and they're going to monitor the changing conditions on Earth. But if the satellite is not pointed at the Earth, it's kind of hard to see the Earth changes. So, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and eventually it will come out. So with people like you who do all the research, remember all the little facts, and then put the facts together to make a full sentence, that's what we need. We really need to have people to watch.
Sure.
Robert, I need to interrupt here. I just got word that we're having some difficulty with people actually getting into the studio to ask questions. Once again, I want to give that number, 929-477-3397, and press 1, and I will get you on the air. And Robert, we're having some difficulty with people trying to get in to ask Bill some questions. But once again, that's our number, 929-477-3397. Gentlemen, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's okay. Listen, Vaughn, if we do get a caller, just break right in and let us hear what they have to say, because we want that as much as anything else. I was going to mention to Bill and the audience that Philip Corso, who I did strike up on a friendship with before he died, had told us all in his book The Day After Roswell that a lot of the missile shots that went out from Vandenberg Air Force Base always had two payloads. One was whatever they listed as it, and then there was always a UFO-related payload with it. There was usually something to do with the National Reconnaissance Office, spy satellite monitoring. So, that's going on. And the public got to see everything in Cape Canaveral. That's the way NASA and the CIA wanted it. But a lot of the serious stuff was going on at Vandenberg. Bill, I don't know how much more you wanted to speak with us, but I did have one further question for you until unless you have more to say. I understand you're going to have something to say about Bigfoot.
Oh yeah, we have a couple people that come to the group now because we entertain people, anybody who comes in with any paranormal information, and they're the Bigfoot researchers. There's been a lot of sightings up in the Dutchess County area of Rhinebeck and Tivoli. So and there when our neighbors first moved in here quite a while ago, they first thing that the neighbors did when she walked out on the porch, she saw a large orange hairy person or something down peeking behind a bush down in her backyard, and she had called her husband and said that they're ready to move because they couldn't take it. So my wife sat down and talked to her about all the things that go on the ridge here, and it's no danger, it's no problem. It's just something that's here. So, and we hear once in a while, we hear some strange, there's strange noises. Now the Bigfoot people talk about there's knockings. They knock on the trees and they do these things. So it's getting very busy in the Hudson Valley now on Bigfoot sightings, and there's two different groups. There's a group that's trying to determine who they are and what they are, and then there's a group that's out trying to hunt them. So it's always an interesting situation on how much information you get. If you're part of the group that's is giving out the information, they're very choosy on who they give it to. But there's been some night sightings. People have seen it. Credible people have seen it something running across the road. So it is a very interesting thing, and I believe that they may be interdimensional. And why they would suddenly crop up in one area as much as they do, unless they're stranded and they got here and the portal closed and they have to wait till it opens up again. So I'm not really sure. I have full faith that they are probably good to be here, and I trust what they do.
I get the impression, I don't know a whole lot about Bigfoot yet, and I'm sure I'm going to be learning something in the course of the program. But I get the sense that at least some of them, and there may be more than different types, some of them seem to go out of their way to avoid human contact. Do you ever get that sense?
Yeah, they are very shy. They're very they do run off. The group up there in Tivoli, they put apples on trees. They go out and they do all these things, and they go back out there and the apples are suddenly gone, and the apples are too high for the deer to get to. So it's and then they're talking about the different formations of the broken trees. There's some that they make like a teepee. So there's a lot of interesting things going on, and it's going to be good when they find out, and hopefully if they do make published contact, that would be a good thing. But it's like the UFOs. It's as soon as the government finds out that there's something going on, they will send their people in and scare people. So.
Yeah, in the same way they do with others.
Robert, we have a caller, and actually I had Thomas do the screening for the call, and it's a caller that can't get in personally, so Thomas is going to ask a question for him.
Sure, go right ahead.
Hi, thanks very much. Really appreciate, Bill, everything you're having to say. My friend Matt here in the Ozarks has a question for you, Bill. He's having some difficulty with getting in. As regards to implants, Bill, he wants to know, do you know, are they electronic, and do they measure biometrics, meaning can they transmit our thoughts?
It's a good question. All I've read about when people had them taken out is they are most of the time metallic, and your body generates enough electricity so that you could probably power a small device. And since we don't know what they are, and every time it seems like someone has one taken out, the information, the doctor seems to lose the information on it, or something gets, they send it out to a lab to get checked out, and it disappears. So there's very little tracking of all of these implants that are going on. And implants can be put in your leg. you can actually get an implant put in your shoulder with a GPS on it. So if you're someone of great importance, they can always track you, just like they do in the James Bond movie. It's one of those type of things. There is a group in, I think it's Sweden, that is putting an implant in the hand that would allow you to have like your an ID card. So you would just take your hand and put it up against the thing, and the implant would be in there. So, and they're talking about, there's a conspiracy theory where the government is putting in implants in people for medical reasons, so that they they know who you are and for identification.
Robert, we have another caller that wants to ask a question from 417 area code. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Matt, who just relayed my question through Thomas.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, how are you guys doing tonight?
Okay, so good to hear you.
My question about implants is this. Do you think that it's simply a tracking device? Because it seems to me that alien technology would be able to do a lot more than that, and if they're gathering information, that they would want to gather information from us internally.
Like I say, it's hard to tell because we can't read the device. We can't read what the tracking device does. We don't know if it's a biometric. In other words, it would take your blood pressure and all the things that you, or if it could read your change in chemistry, which was your chemistry of your body changes on your emotions and on your the different things that you do during the day. So if they want to know how you feel, they may be able to just dial that in and find out, who you are and, what you're feeling. And I do believe that they're not just to track you. I believe it does have information, and so when they fly by, they know whether you're a good candidate for their, whatever their purpose is here.
Well,
hey, Matt, I want to ask you,
like a...
Matt,
sorry.
Have you had any personal...
Yes, I do, Bob. Sorry to talk over you. I don't mean to. I'm hearing you chopped up a little. But, yes, when I was 5 years old in Leavenworth, Kansas, I woke up in the middle of the night to a very bright light, and it turned out that it was a being. It looked humanoid, but tall, and the only message that I received was,
I think we're losing transmission a little bit. Matt, you still there?
Matt?
Don't seem to have it. You seem to have lost that call.
Yeah, he dropped. I'd like to have him call back if he's still listening on the internet. His call dropped at a key moment there where we lost some good information.
Vaughn, if I may, while we're waiting for Matt to get back, I should mention that Dr. Roger Lear wrote a landmark book. He was friends with Colonel Corso, by the way. It's called The Aliens and the Scalpel. He was one of the only surgeons on record to say that he was the head of a team that would accumulate these things from around the country and try to break them all down and find out what makes them tick. And I know one of the teams, if there's only one team that's doing this, it's apparently out in Stanford Research Institute in California, where I know at least one implant went out there to some surgeons, medical people. Are we getting Matt back?
He's not back yet. Go ahead.
Okay. But as I say, they apparently they come in different shapes, different sizes, different colors. All of them seem to have a different agenda of their own, which is rather interesting. So, in answer to Matt's question, it may be, there is a tracking device, but it's more than that, even with what Bill said.
Some of them are placed behind the eye.
If anyone's listening, we want to hear personal experiences like Matt. So call in regardless and just let us know your personal experience. Get you right in.
Sure.
Yeah,
Bill, I've finished all my questions that I wanted to go with you, and I think this has been an amazing experience for me to hear all this. And I know a lot of the people. Incidentally, I know your nickname is the Wizard, and a little birdie happened to tell me it was your birthday today. Am I right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, happy birthday, man! I can't think of anybody I'd rather spend it with right now than you. Wow.
Hey, Robert,
that's
Matt
terrific.
is back. Matt is back right quick. Let me go ahead and get him on before we let Bill go, okay?
Sure thing.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll try again here. So my experience in Leavenworth, Kansas, when I was 5 years old, came across in the middle of the night, woke up to a bright light. It was a beam that illuminated the room that I was in. And the message was, do not worry. When the time comes, you will know what to do.
Wow. Interesting.
And I will add one interesting fact that I come from a military background, not myself, but my family.
Terrific.
Very interesting.
See now,
I believe that there is a real possibility that implants are used to use us for remote viewing and to be able to give sense perception to beings that maybe don't have it.
Could very well be. As I say, when you were away, Matt, we were talking about Stanford Research Institute, where a lot of these things are accumulated, and there's a team of medical people that try to break them all down and see what makes them tick. And if there's anything definitive they've come up with them yet, they haven't revealed it, but it's an interesting story to say the least. Before I turn this over and say thank you very much to Bill, I wanted to make mention of our friends, if I can, Vaughn, over at the Legends Club in Noel, Missouri. 3 of us participating, actually 4 of us now, counting Matt. We are all regulars over there. And as you know, we hosts for this show always have a conference call every week or 2 ahead, just to get a heads up on what's going to transpire in the next show. And our last conference call, at least for Thomas and I, was held right at the Legends Club. So thank you to all our friends in the Legends in the Pineville, Missouri area, and I know a lot of you are listening in. We love the place, and Matt, we hope to see you again soon, and we appreciate your input on this. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, guys. You have a great evening, and I'm going to listen to the rest of the show.
Super. And Bill, again, my profound thanks for everything you've told us. I hope it's an open invitation to you to come back again sometime for this. And we hope to see you again, man.
Okay, well, the next time that I get, I get some messages or something, I'll let you know, and we'll take care of it. Okay, sir?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'm going to be signing off. Thank you.
Yep. Bill, thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.